Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we are talking all things Colorado Rockies. And folks, that was an ugly game. Colorado Rockies get absolutely shelled by the Texas Rangers, 10-0. Kumar Rocker absolutely rocked the Rockies today. He has probably his best performance of the year against Colorado. Goes 7 2/3, 3 hits allowed, 3 walks. 2 of those 3 hits came in the second inning, thanks to Troy Johnson and Tyler Freeman. And then it was domination there. On the other end, the Rangers just kind of had their way with the Rockies pitching. Kumar Rocker was really, really good tonight. And it is obviously, hey, great to see a guy that, has dealt with injuries have success. But the main focus here is just the Rockies lineup inability to produce really many base runners. And they were able to have some success in the first game of this series. They had 7 hits, but in this one, having about 5 base runners in total is concerning. And they face a talented pitcher, and that's been kind of the theme this year. Is they just haven't been able to get after talented pitchers. Typically, when they face a talented pitcher, this lineup begins to falter. I will say, though, in a game where the Rockies only had 3 hits, Troy Johnson has 2 of them. He goes 2 for 4. He's been such a huge positive. In a game where you lose 10-0, there's really not many positives to pull from, and you really shouldn't, right? Like, hey, silver lining. At least it wasn't 12-0. But Troy Johnson has been a legitimate silver lining on the season, and in this game, he did have 1 strikeout. But ultimately, everyone else was pretty much held blank. Willie Castro was able to draw a walk. Tovar drew 2 walks, which is great to see. There's another random silver lining for you, but the rest of it is all bad. This lineup just disappointing. But look, they have an opportunity to win the series tomorrow, or excuse me, today. I'm recording Tuesday evening for this Wednesday episode, but they have an opportunity to win the series against the Rangers. And it's kind of been a theme so far this month of May. The Rockies have had a lot of turnarounds where, they'll score 6 runs one game, they'll get held scoreless the next. You even look at their series against the Phillies, they score 9 runs, and they score 3, and then they score none. The Mets series, similar. They score 6, but they also scored 5 and 2. The Braves, they were 6, 1, and 6. That's just kind of baseball, but lineup consistency is pretty darn important, and we just see a lot of inconsistencies right now with this Rockies lineup. But that isn't, I wouldn't say that's the reason why this team is 11 games under 500 now. I would attribute it more to the pitching for the Rockies. And Tanner Gordon, who, look, if you're watching the show during spring training, we talked about how Tanner Gordon really looked the best among Dollander and Ryan Feltner. I thought there was a strong case for him to have an opportunity to start, to be that 5th rotation piece. And he started the year in AAA. I think we're really seeing why. Look, Peralta will get the loss because the Rockies went with that kind of bullpen start. Peralta being that second lefty in the pen next to Bernardino. Peralta gave up 2 in the first, and then Tanner Gordon said, hold my beer, I'm going to give up a few more along the way. Really disappointing line from Gordon too. 6 1/3. He gives up 12 hits, 7 earned runs, just 1 walk. The king of silver linings is back. Just 1 walk, baby. But the 12 hits, he got absolutely peppered in this one. He got, he just, yeah, just not good enough. And he does have 5 Ks, but kind of goes in line with how the Rockies build this team, that they will have to find some solid pitching. Pitching will always be a challenge at Coors Field. They will never have a rotation where 1 through 5 is daunting to face. But there still needs to be an expectation that they can build a rotation that is palatable, that is at least somewhat overwhelming for lineups to face. And right now, they really don't have that. They have Dollander, and they have Quintana. Um, and that second name kind of fluctuates. Sugano at times, Freeland for the first couple starts of the year, um, and Ryan Feltner for a start or two. But ultimately, this rotation has been pretty darn bad. Not even pretty darn, like, it's a bad rotation. They have the worst ERA in baseball now. There's just not a lot of positives to take from this rotation. And this start is especially disappointing for Tanner Gordon, because this is one of those young pieces that the Rockies really need to be productive. And he has been anything but that this year. He's you look at some of his other appearances, and it just, none of it is shining. He did only give up 1 run in 4 innings pitched against Pittsburgh, in a game they lost 7-2. The Phillies, he gives up 2 runs in a game they lost 9-3. He's just not a part of any stat lines where, like, hey, that was pretty good. Obviously, that spot against the Dodgers is the one that really sticks out, where he pitched 4 innings, 7 hits, 6 earned runs. And that's a thing. You look across the board for Tanner Gordon right now, and I mean, his stuff isn't making anybody miss. 7 hits allowed against the Dodgers in 4 innings pitched. 6 hits allowed in 3 innings pitched against the Reds. The Braves, 3 innings pitched, just 1 hit allowed. And then Phillies 4, Pirates 3. His ERA now up to a 6.6 ERA. I mean, Tanner Gordon, Michael Lorenzen, Kyle Freeland, all ERAs over 6. It's just that we know this season's going to be difficult, but those are going to be big things that this front office will need to address, because there's just no excuse to have a bunch of guys that are tossing underhand. It's just hard to be competitive when you're giving up 10 runs in a game. And I think for the Rockies to succeed, they will obviously need to take advantage of Coors Field and have a really dominant lineup. But they will also need to have some productive pitching. And you think of the last time that they were in the playoffs, they had multiple starters who were solid. Kyle Freeland was a Cy Young candidate. German Marquez was impressive. And Antonio Senzatella was solid, right? You had 3 guys right there. Right now, the Rockies have Chase Dollander, and that's it. That's who I have on the boat currently for the Rockies pitching for the future. So Tanner Gordon, Ryan Feltner, they have an opportunity to find themselves in the boat with Chase Dollander. Right now, they are not there. And I think that's kind of the one disappointing, scary part about a rebuild is you like to see the improvements. You like to see growth in different areas. And we have seen that with some of these guys. But pitching at the start of the year, it felt like something was coming together. Alan Leichman was being a bit of a guru. Well, some of these guys are being figured out now in May, and you're seeing these inflated scores, and you're seeing these inflated ERAs, which leads to how are the Rockies going to position themselves for the future? It's not overly early to talk about moves that the Rockies will need to decide to make at the trade deadline. I think that is going to be a great time for the Rockies to capitalize on teams who are desperate to make a playoff push. Here's the big issue, though, for the Colorado Rockies is teams typically making deals at the deadline have things to give. And the Rockies just don't have a lot of that. They don't have this bountiful chest of goods that people can come and select from. And the Rockies will need to be really methodical and wise when it comes to some of these trades, because Mickey Moniak's name's obviously been tossed around. Brendan Doyle's name has been tossed around for a millennium and beyond. And then, maybe you see some of these pitchers have their names be mentioned. And so for Colorado, they will need to be smart, but I think will need to take action. And take advantage of hopefully having one of these older pitchers stay solid. Jose Quintana, you want him to stay around a 4 ERA. We talked about that last show. Sugano, you want to have him be kind of in that same ballpark of a 4 ERA. We've mentioned in past shows that, last year with the Orioles, he had a really solid start before completely falling apart in May and June. These next few months for Sugano are really huge, not only for his value, obviously his confidence, but for the Colorado Rockies. You want Sugano to pitch well because it gives you more avenues to deal him at the deadline. I think could be a great story if he pitches well at Coors Field, but ultimately he has a small window because he's 36 years old. So the Colorado Rockies, they need to position themselves and look at teams like the Texas Rangers, who, although they're 2 games under 500, are right in the thick of a divisional race. They're a game back of the A's. Seattle has struggled at the start of this year, right? Like, those are the teams that the Rockies will need to contact and say, hey, we've got a 5th starter for you. We have a great outfielder with pop. You name it, right? But obviously, you also want to be smart about what you're trading away. So for a guy like Mickey Moniak, the Rockies will have to decide, hey, is this a guy we see at Coors Field for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years? The answer is yes. Then the next question is, well, is there an offer that can pull us away and send him away? And so this front office, you do have to believe in them. You do have to trust in them. And it's funny I mentioned that because for whatever reason, online takes were going off yesterday and today about it. And, look, we're all going to have our opinions about the Rockies because in Denver, we have seen successful rebuilds with the Avs, the Nuggets, the Broncos. And we've seen championships with all 3 of those teams. But building a baseball roster is extremely difficult. It's really, really hard to do. And even if you build it right, it might not net you a championship. It might not even net you an NL West title because of how difficult a division it is. But there is an expectation to compete. But why am I talking all about this? Well, Tyler Columbus, who is well known in the Rocky sphere, he had a tweet come out, and he put out a tweet that said, "This Rockies rebuild is really coming together just like every other one." That obviously created a stir. People reacted one way, some people reacted another way. Look, my opinion on it is way too early to judge and to critique year one of the Paul Day Podesta rebuild. We're 50 games into the year, right? Like, not only that, but you're looking at a roster that was also not only the worst team in baseball last year, historically the worst team in baseball. Or excuse me, one of the worst. I think they're a couple wins away from being the worst. So takes like this are, I think, a little frustrating because, look, there's a rebuild takes time. That being said, I understand if fans are apathetic or frustrated or annoyed or any of those negative emotions because this team has been so bad for so long and have had such incompetent front offices in the past and have felt frustrated or burned by poor decisions made by ownership. I think those emotions are completely fair and completely justifiable. But what I don't think is fair is comparing 50 games into a rebuild to, you know, Bill Schmidt or, the groups that have come before and their attempts to rebuild. Because there's been obvious moves even in year one as you're figuring things out. Moves that have been productive. Troy Johnson, who we talked about, has been an extremely productive addition. TJ Rumfield has been extremely productive. Julian has been productive. Those were all moves that this front office made that, you know what, we'll see how they affect the Rockies long term. But Troy Johnson, you look at who's the MVP of the Rockies right now. I think you'd say Mickey Moniak. You could say maybe Hunter Goodman, but I think you could also say Troy Johnson, who not many teams were looking at. The Rockies pick him up, and he's been a breath of fresh air. He's been great in the locker room. So ultimately, the whole point of this, because it wasn't just Columbus, there were a bunch of different personalities online that just started. They were kind of bickering. It was a bit much. It's like, guys, come down. Come on, let's chill out here. But his tweet sticks out just because it's a take that you sometimes see, especially about the Rockies, because they've been bad for so long. But there needs to be at least a belief that this front office can turn it around, and they have made moves. I think after year one, you can reassess. You can see, hey, what are some of the other moves or decisions they're trying to make? And then after year two, I think really you have to give a front office at minimum 3 years to see some sort of growth, an opportunity to compete. If after 3 years you say, wow, this team still stinks, our guys all still stink, and you know what, we're not competing for anything, more than okay. But 50 games into a year, I just think that's a bit of baloney, as they say in showbiz, and that does it for another Rockies Daily. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Do you agree with Columbus, though? Do you say, hey, this does feel reminiscent of everything we've seen in the past? Let me know. If you say, hey, it's too early, this is the greatest front office of all time, maybe you hold that opinion too. Regardless, I want to hear it down below. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Go Rockies as always, and I will see you tomorrow.